Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the 5th episode of RCO Retro Client Overview. If you've not already seen earlier episodes, this is a series on old and discontinued clients, some of which were popular clients used by a lot of players, while others are lesser known private clients that never made it into the public eye. Today's episode is going to be focused on the Sync client for Minecraft 1.12.2, and this makes Sync the most modern client yet in this series. Sync was going to be a paid and public client, but due to a few unforeseen issues that we'll talk more about later in the video, the client was never actually finished or released to the public. I have been given exclusive access to the client, so I can load it up and take a look at some of its features and talk about some of the client's rich and interesting history, from nearly being bought out by the Catalyst client to some insane and overpowered modules that were exclusive to the Sync client at the time, to a working dupe on 2b2t.org. This is going to be an interesting video, but before we get started, I want to take a second to shout out the legends that support my work. These videos take a lot of time to make, and honestly they wouldn't be possible without all of the support from everyone on screen now. If you enjoy my content, the best way to show your support for what I do and to ensure videos like this continue to be released is to join these legends. Every cent helps, and you can join for less than $1 a month. Thanks guys, I really do appreciate all of the support. Now let's get into the video. Sync was built as a premium hack client for Minecraft 1.12.2, designed with anarchy servers like 2b2t in mind. I was told that the goal was to create something polished enough to compete directly with other big paid clients of the time, while still feeling fresh and original. Sync was going to be sold for €20 per license key, putting it in the same bracket as popular clients like Future or RussiaHack. What really made Sync stand out was its feature set, from different GUI formats to advanced combat modules like Piston Aura or Piston Pusher, to unique utility and render modules that went beyond what free clients were offering at the time. The client was developed by Tax, Skill and CJ, with another player Bloke handling the client's website. I actually got to speak to most of the developers myself, and later in this video I will share some funny stories and behind the scene details from this time that you won't find documented anywhere else online. Even though Sync never saw a public release, the client itself was already fully functional and pretty feature rich. At the time, the client looked like a promising and serious alternative to established names, with some features that were not only competitive but also completely unique to the Sync client. So let's start with the most obvious and standout features. The GUI comes in 3 different modes. The default one for this build is called Material, and I really like how it looks. There is also a CSGO themed one which looks interesting, but I don't personally like this style of GUI. And lastly, there's the old style GUI which looks like most other 1.12.2 clients. All 3 of these variants have really cool animations. The HUD editor has a physics animation with left and right sway, and opening your inventory has a zoom effect. The GUI also offers a really cool looking tooltips with a glow or blur effect. It really is impressive for an older 1.12.2 client. Unfortunately, some of the render and combat modules crash my game, but I can still show you some of the old modules and settings, and I also want to showcase some of the old gameplay videos that were released when the client was still being developed. Let's start with good old Auto Crystal. I was told that the client offered a very powerful and competitive Crystal Aura module at the time. The module also offers an insane amount of different settings. Flint and Steel Piston Aura. I was told that Sync was one of the first clients to add this feature. Apparently some old random Chinese hack client created this first, but Sync created their own version of the module and abused it on popular servers like strict.2b2tpvp.org. Apparently they abused this so much that the admins behind the server disabled pistons for a while due to players complaining, which just goes to show how powerful the module was at the time. The client also offered a few legit modules like Ghost Aura, which basically works like modules in popular CPvP Ghost clients, giving a user an advantage in legit Crystal PvP without being blatant. They also created their own version of popular bypasses. I was told that for a limited time they had a working Elytrafly bypass on 2b2t, though this was not entirely unique to the Sync client. And one of my favorite modules offered in the client is Skill Aura. This module is only designed to trigger a blue screen of death and nothing else. It's an amazing troll module, and I can't say I've seen it in any other client. And I'm sure watching all of these old videos you have noticed how clean the render modules are. From name tags to custom shaders, the client clearly had some very clean and good looking renders. Even by today's standards, I still think they look really good. The story of Sync begins in May 2021. The client actually started not as a new base, but rather as a fork of the well-known and popular Seppuku client. There is nothing really worth covering from this early version, and in any case, a few months later in August, the team shifted to a new fork of the Cookie client and began experimenting with renders for Piston Aura and some other features. But once again, this release would not be continued for long. Later in September, the developers once again pivoted, but this time rather than forking an existing client, they created their own custom new base. Over time, this new client grew to over 1,300 commits and served as the foundation for the Sync client. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the development team consisted of Tax, Skill, and later CJ, while another contributor, Bloke, worked on the client's website. I was told that they all originally met through the Cloud Anarchy community. This is actually quite funny considering a few months later the Cloud Anarchy server owner, Crazy Monkey, who is a good friend of mine and also happened to own the Catalyst client at the time, heard about the Sync client and offered to buy the client and its code to merge its features into Catalyst. The Sync client devs decided to decline this offer, so the Catalyst client was continued separately to the Sync client. It is actually kinda sad thinking back to these times. I remember being super excited about Catalyst and hearing about the Sync client for the first time. Both clients had so much potential, but sadly both clients were later discontinued, though for very different reasons. Regardless, the thought that they never reached their full potential is quite sad. Anyways, let's get back to that history. Taxonic released a few client gameplay videos on YouTube showing off what the client could do. Features like Piston Aura, Piston Pusher, and a polished UI stood out as being ahead of the curve for 1.12.2 clients. At some point, Sync even had a working dupe on 2B2T, which is pretty impressive for a small client that you've probably never heard of. While not widely known, the Sync client had a small but loyal following, and these early YouTube videos built a really positive reputation around the client. Behind the scenes, however, not everything ran so smoothly. I was told that someone once found the test website and managed to purchase license keys, but the website was far from complete, so the person who made these purchases got nothing for their money, which makes the situation even funnier to me. There is also a really funny story behind the original domain, syncclient.org. The site was registered through Namecheap, but the account got suspended after SkillNoob pulled a prank on his school. He purchased a domain similar to the one owned by his school and made a copy of their login page, but this page would only redirect users to a Rickroll. At some point after creating this troll page, a nearby construction project took out the fiber lines, which took the school's website offline. His fake website then shot to the top of search results, and in a single day over 2,000 people tried to log in, only to get Rickrolled. Namecheap eventually flagged the account demanding business documents, and when the group could not provide these documents, Namecheap suspended all of the domains registered to the account, and this is how they lost access to the original syncclient.org domain. They later rebranded to syncclient.dev. Later on, by mid-2022, some of the major PvP servers like crystalpvp.cc started to support newer versions. At the time, this was not a problem since their main target server was 2B2T, which still remained on 1.12.2. By 2023, the Sync client had come a long way. It was inching closer and closer to its first public release, but in August, before the devs ever got to this first public release, 2B2T updated to Minecraft 1.19. Porting Sync to this new version would have required rewriting large chunks of the code, a task that felt overwhelming and unrewarding. At the same time, SkillNoob was finishing school and burned out from coding, while Tax lost interest in both playing Anarchy and working on the client. Motivation within the group dried up, and although there were a few traces of a Fabric port started in 2023, it never got far enough to revive the project. Eventually, the team agreed that Sync would remain private and unfinished. In conclusion, Sync is one of the most interesting lost clients that I have covered in this series. It was a project with enormous promise, but sadly never got to reach its full potential and died off before making it into the public eye. Back to the present day, the client's domain is set to expire, and after asking, I was told that the codebase would remain private and nothing further is planned with the client. This is not exactly the happy ending I usually like to end on. I would have loved to announce an open source or public release. The idea that hours and hours of development time went into the client without it ever being widely used is very sad, but not all stories get a happy ending. While I can't link to this client in the description down below, my website or Minecraft.net does have a retro client category with some other and even older hack clients, so if you're still watching, this is probably worth checking out. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I have been your boy KiLAB. Peace in the Middle East.